it's Janice. Welcome back to La Rue de Fleurs channel. We're in the studio today beginning the start of our Shattered Squares Alpine Trail quilt. I'm super excited to get started with this. First, step one is to get out your pattern and a coffee, obviously, and take a few minutes to read through, decide what size you're going to make so that you can follow the instructions and decide on how many pieces you need to cut. I've included a little coloring page if you like to plan even further, and then you can get started cutting. For my quilt, I'm deciding to use up a bunch of scraps, as I discussed in the last fabric selection video. So you'll see here that with this wood grain, I have to pair it with something else because we're cutting two different size squares for this pattern, and you need to make some pairs of them. So you need 6.5 and 6-inch squares, and then we're going to pair them up, and they offset a little bit, which you'll see when we start to do the assembly. But it's a really great way to use up scraps because I don't really need a ton of fabric to work on this project. So if you have, pieces that you love, you treasure, but you just have a little bit left, this is a great way to use those up, especially depending on the size that you choose to make. So for the throw size, I'm actually going to do an extended throw. So the throw size finishes at 64 square, but I'm going to make mine a little bit longer. So I'm going to add an extra row at the bottom. So I'm adding a few additional blocks to the end of it, and you'll see that I kind of mess up and I have to go back and cut a little bit more. It also would have helped if I remembered that I needed to make everything as a set, and I would have cut both the larger and smaller sized blocks at the same time. But, that's what you need to pay attention to when you're reading through your pattern and not just kind of staring at the pretty fabrics and getting distracted. But anyway, I digress. So I'm just flipping through my different fabrics here and trimming them all up. It's really quite relaxing part of quilting is to cut out all of your fabrics and just take your time, put on a podcast or some music, or just kind of in the silence and enjoy that if you're like me. And I'm just trimming everything up, and anything that I have left over, then I just instantly have started to try to cut those down into more usable pieces for myself. So 2.5-inch squares, sometimes I make 5.5-inch squares for my minky blankets. Any of that kind of thing. I think just trying to keep it out of your scrap bin. But for this one, I'm really not having a lot of scraps because I'm already using up leftover pieces, and I'm just trimming out exactly what I need to make my my oversized throw. So I don't know if for this particular one we'll have a lot of zero waste projects to work on at the end. I will come up with something for the end of April. I think possibly we might work on like an embroidery sampler because I'm kind of dying to get into some embroidery. So we'll see about that. But anyway, here you can see I'm just trimming this last little bit down to 2.5-inch squares so that I'm just going to put them straight in that little bin when I'm done. And then the little tiny end, I just throw in a bin I called snips. And then when I need little tiny bits of fabric, or I take them to sometimes little classes, and then people can have a fun sampling of some of my tiny scraps to play with. It's really fun that way. So there is my beautiful rifle paper, one of the main feature fabrics, and we went over all of that in the fabric selection video. So you can go over there if you haven't already and check out that video if you need some inspiration for getting started pulling your fabrics. Then I also added in this little blueprint that I didn't pull in that video, just wanted a little bit deeper of a blue color, and I thought that one reminded me of like fireflies, which I thought would be a sort of a fun introduction for the rest of the theme, the forest woodland theme. So here I am trimming a little bit more, and I'm just going to go ahead and pop a bit of music on while I continue to work on this bit, and then I will come back and we will talk through a little bit of the background fabric preparation. Okay, and here everything is cut. Of course, all of the measurements that you'll need will be included in that pattern, which is again available in my Etsy shop, Le Rue de Fleurs. And you can see I've grouped everything together into its little one size larger block and then the smaller block, and then that is what we will work through together when we pair things up. So start thinking about which colors you like that will look really nicely together as you work through your fabrics too. And now I'm just trimming up to get ready all of the background pieces that I will need. Again, I'm making a sort of extended throw size, so I'm taking that into account, and I've added a few extra pieces to the count listed in my pattern, but you can adjust that as necessary. Of course, all of the standard sizes that I list will have the exact count that you will need. And then I'm just trimming off all of the edges and straightening everything up and trimming off the selvage, and then awkwardly getting ready to cut. It's very hard sometimes to position this in a good way to film it, but I do my best. So anyway, you will less awkwardly cut your pieces, and we are going to make a whole bunch of squares for the background of this one, and I am just gonna cut and then cut and cut some more, and that's how you make a quilt or get all your pieces ready. So I'm just lining everything up. I'm trying to be as straight as I can, although we will trim the blocks, of course, at the end. So if there's a little bit of wiggliness, it's okay, because you can straighten things up at the end. You know, don't be too hard on yourself. And then I like to stack and whack, so I try to cut as much as I possibly can at one time to get through it. The fun part is in the reveal and cuddling up with your quilt, not necessarily prepping everything. But here we go. And then I'm trying to use every little bit of the pieces that I possibly can, so I don't have as much stuff going back in my scrap bin. So I'm even trying to use up these little bit of ends here to complete cutting all of the squares that I'll need. And then you can decide for yourself, they also need to be cut on the diagonal for this project, which is of course in the directions. So you can either go ahead and cut those at this point or cut them later in the pattern when you're ready for that step. It's up to you. And then we need a few strips. So I'm just doing the same thing, neatening up my selvage, and then I'm going to stack and whack and cut a whole bunch of strips that go down the center that shatter our squares essentially. So you can see I'm using my very technical finger counting method to get all those strips the right length, and yeah, you know, math. And then I use all those little 1.5 inch strip ends for lovely handkerchief, 1.5 inch handkerchief blocks. So you can create a bin for those as well. Maybe we'll do that in the future. And then again, I'm just stacking and whacking, getting all of those strips that I need for each one of the block centers, and I'm almost done getting ready for my fabrics. And then part 3 video will of course be us putting the blocks together. That's really fun. So as you're cutting, have a look through your fabrics, like I said, and try to decide which ones you think contrast each other or offset each other well enough that they can be right beside each other, because we will go ahead and stick these blocks, we'll sew the squares together and then cut them apart and kind of offset them with the larger and smaller, and that's what gives us the fun kind of shattered effect. So start thinking about the groupings that you like and what you want to see, and I will catch you in the next video. In the meanwhile, if you would like to hit the like and subscribe, leave a comment, let me know how the project is going for you. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining me today. Stay creative, friends.